Good morning. I want to thank all of you for being here. We have to discuss an issue that every member of Congress and every journalist should care deeply about. I first want to thank Dylan Collins, Vermonter, for being here to share his story, and I want to thank his family. His mom and dad are here, and his sister Abigail. And I also want to thank Dylan and my colleagues for your constant advocacy for justice for himself, but really it's about justice for journalists who are doing extraordinarily important work in very dangerous places. And I want to thank friends and family, the representatives of Agence France Presse, Reuters, and Al Jazeera. And it was journalists from each of those organizations that was on the receiving end of this attack by the IDF. Some of you here are aware of Dylan's case, but it's important that the world knows, and I'm going to just give a narrative of what happened. On October 13th, 2023, Dylan and his colleagues were on a very open hillside reporting from a press van in southern Lebanon. They had prominently and clearly marked press on their the roof of their vehicle, on their helmets and vests. They were extremely visible, as if they were out in the middle of that green. No question. And after being closely surveilled for hours by Israeli drones, they were circling overhead, and they were out there for a long time, and they were obviously identified with the drone surveillance. They were directly fired on by a tank. The result of that attack was the killing of the Reuters video journalist Issam Abdallah and the maiming of the Agence France photographer Christina Assi. She lost one leg and pretty much lost the use of her other leg. And let me say it again. They were clearly marked as press. They were in an open area that was frequently manned by journalists. They were in the direct line of sight from IDF across the border. This is not a situation where there was any reasonable doubt about who they were and what their purpose was. They were not in an area that was engaged in conflict. And my colleagues here today, including Senator Van Hollen and my colleague from Vermont, Representative Balint, along with dozens of other members of Congress, have tried for over 2 years to get accountability for this attack. With the Biden administration and with the Trump administration, and most importantly, with the Israeli government. We have been extremely patient, and we have done everything we reasonably can to obtain answers and accountability. We've been stonewalled at every single turn. And today, I'm sending my 7th letter to the Secretary of State. This is yet another letter in an ongoing effort on our part to get answers to what and why and how Dylan was fired on, along with his colleagues. In many letters over the 2 years, phone calls and direct conversations with high-level officials in both governments, U.S. and Israel, we've sought to obtain answers to very simple questions. Which IDF unit fired the shots and why? That is knowable. Did the Israeli government investigate the attack? We don't even have an answer to whether there was an investigation. Did the U.S. government talk to the Israeli government about the attack and investigate the attack on an American citizen? Has the Israeli government held anyone accountable for this attack? If not, has the Leahy law, established by our predecessor, Becca and me, Senator Patrick Leahy, has that been applied? And here are the conclusions after 2 years that we want to share with you. Number one, the IDF has made no effort to seriously investigate this incident where a journalist was killed, a journalist was maimed, and a journalist was injured. Israeli authorities claimed they weren't aware an American was hurt in the deadly attack, even though the U.S. government said that they directly engaged with the Israeli government on the incident. The State Department has told us that they informed the Israeli government of the attack and requested a swift, thorough, and transparent investigation by the Israelis. But the Israeli government told us as recently as this summer that the IDF was not aware at the time that an American was injured in the deadly attack. 2, the IDF claimed they conducted an investigation, but there's absolutely no evidence that there was any investigation. IDF has not spoken to Dylan. You'd think that would be a normal stop on an investigation. The IDF has not spoken to the other victims, the witnesses, or any of the independent investigators who collected evidence of the attack. There is no evidence of a report or any written proof of an investigation from the IDF. And there is no evidence that the IDF interviewed the shooters involved in the attack. 3, the Israeli government told my office that the investigation was closed. The investigation that never occurred apparently is now closed. Then they told Agence France, Dylan's agency, that an investigation is still active and under review, and that the findings have not been concluded. So which is it? Both can't be true. You know, I have appreciated the open line of communication that I've had with the Israeli embassy here in Washington. But from the limited information they've relayed back to Washington from the Israeli Ministry of Defense, it's clear that the IDF has never had serious intentions to investigate this attack. The only thing they've told us is that the attack was, quote, unintentional to fire at people who were in the open, very visible, who were observed being there for several hours. Unfortunately, this fits what is a pattern that leading Israeli human rights investigators have documented. In one incident after another, the IDF will claim to open an investigation, but nothing ever comes of it. No one ever interviews witnesses, no one is ever held accountable, and they hope the international community will just forget about it. We here are not going to forget about this. A journalist died. Another was grievously injured. And we expect the Israeli government to conduct an investigation that meets the international standards and to hold accountable those people who did this. I'll end with this. And I know this is what Dylan feels as well and why he pursues this as he does. An attack on the press is an attack on free speech. An attack on the press is an attack on free speech. I want to thank Dylan, and we are going to continue our effort to get justice for him and for free speech. And thank you. I want to turn this now over to my colleague, Representative Ballot.
Good morning. In honor of Dylan, we've served up a Vermont day for you this morning, so I hope you're appreciating the briskness this morning. So look, we're angry. I want to start with that. We are angry and outraged about this case. I want to thank Mr. Collins for being with us today. And let me say at the top that what happened to these 6 journalists who were wounded, including Dylan, was devastating. I want you to know, Dylan, that I stand with you, the senators stand with you, and there are so many others in Congress who stand with you today. It has been over 2 years since the targeted attack against journalists on assignment in southern Lebanon. We demand accountability. That's why we're out here. We're not letting it go. It doesn't matter how long they stonewall us. We're not letting it go. Dylan is a journalist, he's an American, and he's a Vermonter. While doing his job, he sustained shrapnel wounds. He likely only survived because he was crouched down in the moments before the second tank round hit. Now, several independent investigations that analyzed the video and the audio from the attack shows the attack must have been deliberate. The journalists were all clearly identified as civilians, which is what my colleague, Senator Welch, has laid out for you. There is no question who they were and why they were there. So a deliberate attack on civilians constitutes a war crime under international law. Let's call it what it is. Let's name the thing. We cannot let it stand. It's been, as I said, 2 years. Mr. Collins and the surviving journalists have received no explanation for the attack. Netanyahu's extremist government continues to commit acts of violence against civilians with seemingly no accountability whatsoever. The Israeli government must conduct a credible and thorough investigation of the attacks and make its findings public. The victims, the families, and the United States, we have a right to this information. Again, we demand accountability. It is our duty as members of Congress to demand an open investigation into the attack on any American citizen. The Trump administration must protect all Americans' safety, no exception. I want to thank, most sincerely, the Committee to Protect Journalists for continuing to pursue answers and defending the internationally recognized right of journalists to report safely and without fear of retaliation. And I want to echo what Senator Welch just said. A free press is a pillar of a functioning democracy. Intimidation, suppression, harming and killing journalists, these are key indicators of an authoritarian government. We have seen how the Trump administration and the Netanyahu government are deploying these tactics to silence the press. The erosion of our democratic principles needs to alarm us all. It must be a call to action. Thank you so much, Dylan, for being here. I want you to know we are fighting alongside you, and we will continue to seek accountability for this deliberate act of violence against the free press.
Thank you. Now, Senator, thank you, Congresswoman Ballant. Now, Senator Van Hollen. Thank you.
Well, thank you to Senator Welch, Congresswoman Ballant, for pursuing Dylan's case vigorously and pursuing other cases in pursuit of making sure that we protect press freedom and get accountability. I first met Dylan back in 2024 and met him again in July of this year. I've had the honor of meeting his father as well, and we welcome his other family members here, and thank you for pursuing justice along with Dylan here. Senator Welch has well described the events of October 13th, 2023, so I won't repeat them, and of course Dylan will provide his personal account. But we do know the terrible consequences of what happened that day. One journalist killed, others injured, and we know what happened. We know what happened both from their accounts as well as from 6 vigorous investigations, including by UNIFIL, Reuters, AFP, Human Rights Watch, and Amnesty International. All of them have independently corroborated these details based on video footage and multiple firsthand accounts. They have all concluded that it was an unlawful attack on civilians and likely a war crime. Dylan has gone on to report the truth. He didn't want to become the story, but he has insisted, as all of us should and are now, demanding justice on behalf of his fellow journalists in the Middle East and conflict zones around the world. Despite the ongoing work by Dylan, his family, by Senator Welch, Congresswoman Ballant, myself, and others, we have not seen accountability or justice in this case. And the State Department, our own government, has not done much of anything, really, to pursue justice in this case. It is part of a broader pattern of impunity, of attacks on Americans and on journalists by the government of Israel. We have seen the same in other tragic cases, including that of Shireen Abu Akleh, a Palestinian-American journalist who was killed while reporting on the West Bank. In that case, still no accountability, still no justice. And in this case, too, our calls on the U.S. government to investigate have not been pursued. This is a dereliction of duty. Dereliction of duty by the State Department. As Senator Welch said, the previous administration under President Biden and the current administration. They say that their number one duty to Americans overseas is to protect them. And yet they're failing to do that in this case. I've been involved in many other cases to protect the rights of journalists overseas, including the case of Evan Gershkovich, who was imprisoned in Russia for over 18 months. I met with his family. I met with the Wall Street Journal. And the previous administration worked hard to secure his release, as they should, and as we did. And I was glad to see that happen. But in this case, we have seen no accountability and no justice. I want to thank the Committee to Protect Journalists. As they have documented around the world, we've seen 246 journalists and media workers killed since October 7th in Gaza, Yemen, Lebanon, Iran, making this the deadliest period for journalists the CPJ has ever recorded in 30 years. We cannot have peace or justice if we don't seek the truth. That is what Dylan and his fellow journalists were doing in southern Lebanon, reporting the facts, seeking the truth. And we need to stand with them. And I want to thank everybody who's gathered here to make sure that we pursue justice in this case, because accountability in this case is important to accountability for journalists and American citizens everywhere in the world. I'll turn it back over to Senator Welch.
Pardon me. Thank you, Chris. And now, Dylan, Dylan Collins, who is here from Lebanon. He came in yesterday. And Dylan, welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate it. Good morning. First off, I'd like to thank Senator Welch, Representative Ballant, Senator Van Hollen, as well as Senator Sanders for their endless support. I'd also like to express my deep gratitude to CPJ and Amnesty International and to my family for doing the impossible to get here, driving through a snowstorm. My name's Dylan Collins. I'm a video journalist with the AFP. And on October 13th, 2023, I was wounded in a targeted double-tap attack by Israeli forces on a clearly marked group of journalists in southern Lebanon. The attack killed my colleague Issam Abdallah, a cameraman with Reuters, and left my AFP colleague, Christina Asi, who was just 28 at the time, with life-altering injuries, including the amputation of her right leg. Between the 7 of us gathered to cover news that day, from AFP, Reuters, and Al Jazeera, we had decades of experience working in conflict zones. And we made choices that were explicitly intended to keep us safe. Like dozens of other journalists, we had spent the day patrolling the border, monitoring for this feared escalation in Lebanon, where the situation was tense but calm. We set up on an exposed hilltop, visible to multiple Israeli military positions, as well as to the drones that were circling us overhead. All of us were wearing flak jackets and helmets. All of us had press written across our chest, as did one of our vehicles. we had 3 live feeds going out to 3 international news agencies. An audio analysis of my footage that day shows that an Israeli drone circled us 11 times in the last 25 minutes before we were hit. We thought the fact that we could be seen was a good thing, that it would protect us. But after a little less than an hour at the site, we were hit twice by tank fire. 2 shells on the same target, 37 seconds apart. The first strike killed Isam instantly and nearly blew Christina's legs off her body. As I rushed to put a tourniquet on her, we were hit the second time, and I sustained multiple shrapnel wounds from that strike. It was the first such targeted attack by Israeli forces on members of the press in the wider Gaza war. Almost unfathomable in its brutality then, we have since seen the same type of attack repeated dozens of times. Subsequent reporting found that after firing the 2 shells, the same tank crew opened fire with a .50 caliber weapon for nearly 2 minutes. A move likely intended to finish off any survivors. Let me be clear. This is not an incident in the fog of war. It was a war crime carried out in broad daylight and broadcast on live television. Since day one, I've asked my government to investigate this crime and bring the perpetrators to account. For 2 years, I've made trips to the Capitol. I've met with lawmakers. I've met with the State Department. I've met with the FBI. I've sat down and showed them the raw footage. I've handed them physical copies of the investigations. As an American, I thought I'd find support. I thought my government would fight for me. I thought that when an American citizen is wounded in an attack carried out by the U.S.'s greatest ally in the Middle East, that we'd be able to get some answers. But for 2 years, I've been met by deafening silence. In fact, neither the Biden nor the Trump administrations have ever publicly acknowledged that a U.S. citizen was wounded in this attack. We've seen what happens when there's no accountability. We've watched the same type of deadly attack on journalists happen again and again and again in Gaza. The impunity must end. The U.S. government can start by tracking down the group of soldiers that targeted us and by exposing the command structures that allowed it to happen and to go on unaddressed until today. Thank you for your support and your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dylan. And now Amelia Evans, Advocacy Director, Committee to Protect Journalists.
Since October 7th, 2023, Israel has killed at least 249 journalists. It is an unprecedented number. To date, the Committee to Protect Journalists has confirmed 59 of these deaths were the result of deliberate, targeted attacks by Israel. Such attacks are war crimes. And as our investigations continue, the staggering number of these war crimes can only climb. The attack on October 13 that injured Dylan is one of the first of these targeted attacks that the Committee to Protect Journalists has documented. And through my conversations with Dylan, I know that he is pursuing accountability for this attack, not just for himself, or Assam Abdullah, who was killed, or his colleague Christina Asi and the 4 other journalists who were injured. But he is pursuing accountability in this case because he understands also that if there is not accountability, in this case, when a US journalist was harmed and his representatives in Congress are doggedly seeking justice, when several leading news outlets are involved and have all demanded Israel provide answers, when 5 international organizations, including a UN body, all have concluded that Israel was responsible for the attack and offered a preponderance of evidence showing just how identifiable the journalists were, when at least 6 different cameras, at least 3 providing international live streams, were all filming at the moment the first strike hit. If accountability is not possible in this case, then what does that mean for the more than 200 Gazan journalists who have been killed? Killed in a context where key evidence may since have been repeatedly bombed, where international investigators and outside journalists alike are prohibited by Israel from entering to further document the cases, and where eyewitnesses may die any day, if they have not already, from hunger and disease. Without doubt, the United States government has been derelict in its duty to Dylan, just as Senator Van Hollen has said. And it has been derelict also in its duty to Shireen Abu Akleh, whose investigation has languished at the FBI for the last 3 years. This failure of the United States has been amplified because Israel's pattern of impunity is not new. The Committee to Protect Journalists has found that since 2001, Israel has killed 269 journalists, and no one has ever been charged or held to account in any of these cases. The revelations that Senator Welch shared today put both the United States and the wider international community on notice that Israel's purported investigative bodies are not functioning to deliver justice, but to shield Israeli forces from accountability. The Trump administration must take action. It must open an effective criminal investigation into Dylan's case. It must publish a timeline for completing Shireen's investigation. And it must demand Israel name all the military officials throughout the command chain who were involved in both cases. But as Israel's key strategic ally, the United States must do much more than that. It must publicly recognize Israel's failure to properly investigate the war crimes committed by its military, and to work with the international community to ensure a full and fair investigation into each and every one of the apparent war crimes that Israel has committed against journalists. Thank you.
And now Elizabeth Rigby. Elizabeth Rigby. Thank you so much. Amnesty International. Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to start by thanking Senators Welch, Van Hollen, and Congresswoman Ballant, as well as our colleagues at the Committee to Protect Journalists for convening this important press conference today to bring attention to the attacks on journalists by Israeli forces and to demand accountability for those violations of international law. I'd also like to thank Dylan for his courage to be with us here today, to speak out for his colleagues in Lebanon and Gaza, and to share his story. I'm sure that it must not be easy to relive the horrific events of that day. On behalf of Amnesty International USA, I'm here today to echo Dylan's demand for justice. Amnesty International carried out an investigation, as has been mentioned, into this attack on October 13th, a deadly attack by Israeli forces on a group of 7 journalists while they were reporting in southern Lebanon. Our research team combed through a mountain of evidence, including over 100 videos and photographs, analyzing weapons fragments from the site of the attack, and interviewing 9 witnesses and survivors. On that day, Dylan and his colleagues, and I do want to name them, Issam Abdullah, Thaer Sudani, Maher Naza, Christina Asi, Carmen Jokhtar, and Eli Brakia, gathered in a location close to the village of Alma Ashab in South Lebanon to report on ongoing clashes between Israeli forces and Hezbollah that day. Our research found that the group was visibly identifiable as journalists by Israeli forces across the border at a number of military installations. They were visibly marked as journalists, both from what could be seen from across and above. They were stationed in the same open location for about an hour in full view. As has been mentioned, they were monitored by by an Israeli Apache helicopter and likely an Israeli drone that hovered above the group for around 40 minutes before the first strike. In light of these facts, it's Amnesty's assessment that the Israeli military knew, or should have known, that this was a group of journalists, and yet they decided to attack them anyway. 2 strikes, 37 seconds apart. The first strike originated from hills between 2 villages within Israel, close to the border. The first strike killed Issam Abdullah and severely injured Christina Asi. 37 seconds later, the second strike hit, further injuring the group. Amnesty International was able to examine the weapon shrapnel at the site and determined that it was an Israeli-made 120 millimeter tank round. I do also want to make clear that Amnesty found no indication that there were any fighters or any military targets at the site of the attack. And so Amnesty's investigation included that this was likely a direct attack on civilians and must be investigated as a war crime. And those responsible must be held to account. No journalist should ever be targeted or killed for simply carrying out their work. And no government should be able to kill or attack journalists with impunity. The Israeli military justice system has consistently failed to deliver justice to Palestinians and other victims of unlawful killings, serious injury, or other violations of international law. Prosecutions are extremely rare, and convictions are even rarer. Israel must not be allowed to continue killing and injuring civilians, including journalists, with impunity. And so to close, I would like to simply say that we share Dylan Collins' call for U.S. authorities to open a truly independent and thorough investigation into this attack, and for accountability to go right to the top of the Israeli military's chain of command. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Any questions? Yes.
Hi, my name is Sumaira from
Come on up here,
Reuters.
Dylan.
Thank you for doing this. Senator, I just wanted to ask you, because you said IDF told you that they were not directly targeted, but you also said that there wasn't much of an evidence of an investigation.
That's right.
So can you help us understand how they know that the journalists were not targeted if there wasn't much of an investigation? Also, you said that I'm writing my 7th or 8th letter to Secretary of State. How many letters have you written to Secretary Rubio? Have you gotten any concrete response from him? Has he been in touch with you? How
Right.
has the communication been? Thank you.
Well, the answer is no. The Israeli ambassador responded and spoke to us and gave us what information he had. That's number one. So I do appreciate the engagement of the ambassador, but the ambassador had no information other than what was given to him, which was non-existent. And then, two, the point you just asked about, the investigation, not investigation, there's nothing there. You're basically getting the runaround and you're getting stonewalled. That's the bottom line. You know, in these descriptions and then the follow-up investigations, what it showed is that this is the easiest thing you can do to investigate. It's simple. There were the journalists who were in one location. They were attacked. The location of the attack was clear. The people you need to talk to is clear. And whether anyone has talked to them from the Israeli government, they've not disclosed that at all. So bottom line here, it's pretty clear this is just stonewalling.
And with Secretary Rubio, with Trump administration?
No significant response. Yes.
So you said that the Biden administration and the Trump administration have not brought an answer on these attacks. And in the Committee to Protect Journalists, we've heard that attacks like these have been occurring since 2001. Senator, what's changed now? Are you looking to the public for support on accountability? How are you going to make action, something to change from the Israeli government to protect journalists and Americans at this time?
We're getting this Dylan story out. I mean, this is shocking. And for the public, it's a distant conflict. But all of you here know that the point of journalism is to get specific and concrete about something that happened, because it shows a larger pattern. And what's so shocking about this is how simple this is to investigate. There was the loss of life. It was an attack on journalism. So we're here today to talk about Dylan's case for Dylan, for justice for his colleagues, but also to demand accountability from the Israeli government. They're not doing anything. And the United States should be acting aggressively for two reasons. Number one, it's American citizen who was attacked. But number two, it's American weapons that are being used. This is our ally. We have a right, we have an obligation to demand that the rules of engagement comply with international law.
Time for one more question.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Dylan Liam Scott with the Washington Post. Could you speak to what is the long-term effect of this impunity then for you on a personal and emotional level?
We've been repeating the same thing for 2 years. No one's come to ask me about it. I've requested meetings with lawmakers individually. I've requested meetings with the State Department. I've requested meetings with the FBI. No one came to reach out to me. I'm an American citizen hit by the U.S.'s greatest ally in the Middle East, potentially using American weapons. I would think it would be taken more seriously. And also, this was the first targeted attack on journalists after the October 7th attacks. But we've seen the same thing happen again and again and again, and nothing's changing. It's taken a significant toll on me personally.
Thank you. Is that it? Yeah. Thank you all very much. And thank you for the work you do.